The call came in at 8:47 on a Thursday morning. Not a voicemail, not a text, just gone. My phone screen flashed one single message, no service, and then my number, the number I'd had for 6 years, the number I used for work, for my lease application, for my bank, for everything that mattered in my adult life, simply stopped working. I was standing in the parking garage at my job when it happened. I had a 9 a.m. project sync I needed to dial into. I had an invoice I was waiting on from a vendor. I had a friend texting me about dinner plans. And in the span of one network refresh, none of that was reachable anymore. I walked back to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and stared at the dead screen for a solid minute before I understood what had actually happened. My father had canceled my line. Not accidentally, not out of confusion. He'd gone into the account, found my number, and removed it. On purpose, on a Thursday morning before 9 a.m. While I was already at work, because that was the kind of man he was when he wanted to remind you who still held something over you. He thought it was a punishment. He thought it would make me come home and apologize. He thought shutting me out of the plan was the same thing as shutting me up. He didn't understand what I actually managed inside that account. By the following Thursday, 7 days later, he had called me 41 times from 3 different phones. My mother had called 19 times. My brother had texted me a paragraph that started with "Dad is losing his mind" and ended with "Please just pick up." A vendor had tried to reach my father's number twice, failed, and escalated to a number that had been attached to my name for 4 years without anyone in the house ever understanding why. I want to tell you exactly what he had done, what he hadn't realized he was undoing, and why for the first time in my adult life I did not pick up the phone. My name is Dana Reyes. I'm 27 years old. I grew up in the kind of house where the rules were never written down but everybody knew them, especially the ones that only applied to you. My father, Victor Reyes, ran a small HVAC contractor business out of the garage for most of my childhood, then built it into something real: 3 vans, a small crew, a steady client list that included commercial buildings downtown. He was proud of that. Loudly, consistently proud in the way that men are when they built something from scratch and need the people around them to never forget it. My mother, Linda, worked the front of a dental office 3 days a week and spent the rest of her time managing the version of our family she wanted people to see. Holiday decorations on time. Thank you cards sent within the week. A kitchen that always smelled like something baking when company came over. She was warm and careful, which is a specific combination that can look like love from the outside and feel like management from the inside. My brother Marcus was the easy one. For years younger than me, naturally charming, the kind of kid who could forget to do something 3 times in a row and still make my father laugh instead of lecture. He wasn't spoiled, exactly. He just absorbed less of the friction. And in a house with my father, friction was the weather. I was the responsible one. I was the one who read the fine print. I was the one who noticed when a bill was about to auto-draft and there wasn't enough in the account to cover it. I was the one who, at 19 years old, helped my father set up online banking because he didn't trust websites but also didn't trust himself to get to the bank before it closed. That was how it started. One afternoon with a laptop, explaining password managers and auto-pay schedules, and suddenly I was the family's unofficial tech department. Then their unofficial administrative department. Then something harder to name: the person who knew where everything was, who had access to what, and who quietly kept the digital parts of the household running while nobody asked how. By the time I was 22, I was on the family's wireless plan as one of 5 lines. My father's, my mother's, Marcus's, mine, and a 5th line my father used as a dedicated business number for Reyes HVAC. He paid the base plan. That part was true. What was also true, what nobody thought to notice, was that I was the account manager. I was the one who'd set up the account online years ago because my father handed me his credit card and said, "Just do it, I don't have time." My email was the recovery address. My login handled the account dashboard. The business line's voicemail had been set up through the app on my phone, and I had recorded the greeting myself because my father said he always sounded like he was reading off a paper when he tried to do it. I also managed the auto-pay. When the plan price went up 1 January, I had gone in and restructured the payment so it came off a card attached to my account. Not his, because his card had expired and he kept forgetting to update it. I told him. He said, "Handle it." So I handled it. He did not know I was covering $67 a month of that plan out of my own checking account. He did not know his business line's voicemail, call forwarding rules, and client contact list lived inside the app on my phone. He did not know that the vendor portal for his biggest commercial client, Meridian Property Group, had been registered under the email address attached to my carrier login, because 3 years ago when Meridian upgraded their contractor system, I had been the one sitting next to him walking through the registration, and he said, "Just use whatever, I'll change it later." He never changed it. He also never asked. That is the thing about being the person who quietly manages everything. The people you manage it for stop wondering how it works. They just know that it works, and they start to assume that it always will. The fight that led to Thursday morning started on a Sunday. I had driven home for my cousin's birthday dinner, a thing I did because my mother asked, not because I was excited about sitting at that table for 3 hours. I had been home maybe 45 minutes when my father made a comment about my apartment. I lived 30 minutes away in a one-bedroom I'd been renting for 2 years. Decent building, quiet neighbors, a parking spot included. I liked it, more than I'd ever liked the house I grew up in, if I'm being honest. My father's opinion of my apartment was that I was wasting money. He had said this before in the blunt way he said most things, as though the word wasting was just a synonym for choice I didn't approve. But that Sunday, in front of my aunt and her husband and my cousins, he said it differently. "Dana pays somebody else's mortgage every month," he announced, gesturing toward me with his fork like I was a visual aid. "Meanwhile, there's a perfectly good room sitting empty here, but she wants her independence." He said the last word with a particular flatness that turned it into a punchline. My aunt smiled, carefully. Her husband looked at his plate. My mother straightened a napkin that was already straight. Marcus caught my eye from across the table with the look he used when he didn't want to get involved but felt bad about it. I said very evenly, "I'm not moving back home, Dad." "Nobody's asking you to move back," he said, which was not true. He had been asking in one way or another for 2 years. He framed it as financial sense. What he meant was closer to control. "I'm just saying what it looks like from the outside." "Then the outside doesn't have the full picture," I said. He set his fork down. That was always the tell. When Victor Reyes set down his fork mid-meal, the meal was over. "You've got a lot of opinions for someone still on my phone plan," he said. There it was. The reminder. The thing he kept in his back pocket for exactly these moments, the small financial hold he still had over me. The tether he could pull when he wanted to feel like I hadn't completely gotten away. I looked at him for a second and thought about saying everything I knew. I thought about explaining the autopay he didn't know I was covering. I thought about the business line, the vendor portal, the account login. I thought about what it would do to the dinner table if I laid it all out in front of my aunt and her husband. I didn't. I said, "You're right. Dinner was great, Mom." And I left before dessert. He texted me that night, "Don't come back with that attitude." I didn't respond. Monday went quiet. Tuesday went quiet. I figured we were doing the thing we always did, where something sharp got said and then everyone waited long enough that it softened into something that could be ignored. Then came Thursday morning. I sat in the parking garage for 9 minutes trying to figure out what to do. My first instinct was to call him. My second instinct, the one I listened to, was to stop and think about what canceling my line actually meant. Not just for me. For everything that was woven into that account that he didn't know was woven in. The more I thought, the stiller I got. He had removed my line, which meant my personal number was dead. Which meant the autopay I managed was now unmoored, and depending on how the account had processed the removal, it was possible the entire plan's billing had just lost its primary payment method. My credit card, that he didn't know was there. His business line was still active, technically, but his business line's voicemail greeting, call forwarding to the office, and after-hours routing had all been configured through the carrier app on my phone. My phone that no longer had service, which meant the app was logged out, which meant the business line was currently ringing through to an empty configuration. Meridian Property Group's vendor portal, the one with the contracts, the payment approvals, the work order submissions for his biggest commercial client, was registered to the email address tied to my carrier login. The same carrier login he had just removed me from. If the carrier sent a security alert to that email and triggered a verification step, the account could lock. He thought he was taking something from me. He didn't know he was pulling a pin out of a structure he'd been standing on for years without ever looking down. I got out of my car, went upstairs to my desk, borrowed a coworker's phone to dial into the 9 a.m. call and made one decision very quietly. I was not going to fix it, not out of spite, not as a plan. I simply decided that if he wanted to remove me from the account, then the account was his to manage. All of it. Every piece of it he'd handed me and forgotten about and never thought to learn. That afternoon, I walked into a phone store and set up my own plan. New carrier, new number, ported nothing from the old line because there was nothing to port, he'd already killed it. The representative asked if I wanted to transfer any account data. I said no. I had already saved what was mine to a cloud drive years ago, out of a habit that now felt like foresight. By evening, I had a working phone, a new number, and not a single person in my family had it. I went home, made dinner, and sat at my kitchen table in the specific quiet of a person who has finally stopped waiting for someone else to come to their senses. My coworker Priya texted me on my work messaging app. "Everything okay? You seemed a little off today." I typed back, "My dad canceled my phone plan this morning." She replied, "What? Why?" I thought about how to explain it. The dinner table, the fork going down, the comment about attitude and the plan like they were part of the same sentence. The long, invisible list of things I'd quietly managed inside an account he thought he owned. I wrote, he thought it was a punishment. Then, after a second, he didn't know what he was actually turning off. She sent back a long pause and then, "Oh no. Not for me. For him." The first full day with my new number was a Friday, and I want to tell you what it felt like, because I think people expect this part of the story to be dramatic. They expect sleepless nights, chest-tight anxiety, a phone refreshed every 10 minutes hoping someone would find a way through, but IT wasn't like that. It was quiet. Genuinely, almost uncomfortably quiet that I woke up at 6:40, made coffee, and sat by my kitchen window watching the street below like I had nowhere to be. I did have somewhere to be. I just wasn't in a hurry in the way I normally was. The low-grade hurry that had followed me for years, the baseline alertness of someone who is always half expecting to be needed. Nobody needed me that morning. Nobody could reach me. And I realized, sitting there with my mug going warm, that I had not felt this particular kind of quiet in a very long time, that I gave my new number to 4 people that weekend. Priya.my, landlord.my, direct supervisor at work, and my friend Cass, who I'd known since college and who was the only person in my life who had consistently told me, without drama, that my family dynamic was not normal. That was the whole list. For people. The rest of the world, including my father, my mother, and my brother, did not have it. I want to be clear about something. I did not sit down and make a revenge plan. I didn't build a list of things I was going to let fall apart so I could watch my father suffer. That is not what this was. What I did was simply stop. Stop monitoring. Stop patching. Stop being the person who noticed a problem before it became a crisis and quietly fixed it before anyone asked. I had been doing that for so long it had become involuntary. Like breathing. And the moment he cut that line, something in me said, fine. Breathe for yourself for a while. Saturday, I cleaned my apartment. Reorganized a bookshelf I'd been meaning to get to for months. Went to the farmer's market 2 blocks over and bought more vegetables than I would actually use, which felt indulgent and good. Cass called and we talked for 2 hours about nothing important, which is the only kind of conversation I had been too busy to have for most of the past year. Sunday was the first day I thought about what was probably happening at the house. Not with satisfaction. Not yet. More like a person watching weather move in from a distance and calculating, very calmly, how long before it arrives. Here is what I knew about the account, reconstructed from years of managing it. The plan was a 5-line family setup through a major carrier. My father had opened it in his name 11 years ago, but when he upgraded devices 2 years in, he handed me the login to sort out the trade-in, and I never handed it back because there was always something else to handle. The account's primary contact email was mine. The autopay was tied to my debit card. The business line, a separate number under the same plan that had its own caller ID for Reyes HVAC, was configured entirely through the carrier app on my phone. That configuration included the voicemail greeting my father used for new clients. A brief, professional message I had scripted and recorded because he kept stumbling over the version he tried himself. It included call forwarding rules so that after 6 p.m., client calls routed to a secondary number he used at home. It included the contact list synced through the business account, which had over 200 entries: suppliers, inspectors, commercial property managers, 3 years of client relationships filed and labeled and organized in a way my father absolutely did not do himself. When he removed my personal line from the plan, the carrier app on my phone lost its authentication. My login, the one managing all of that, went dark. The voicemail stayed up for now. Recorded greetings don't vanish immediately, but anything that required active app management was inaccessible. The call forwarding rules were still technically in place, but any changes to them required logging into the app, which required my credentials, which my father did not have. The Meridian Property Group situation was more complicated and, in a way, more serious. 3 years ago, Reyes HVAC was brought on as a preferred vendor for Meridian, a property management company that handled 6 commercial buildings downtown. It was my father's biggest single client relationship. Meridian paid through a vendor portal and online system where contractors submitted work orders, invoices, and compliance documents. My father had been invited to register, handed me the laptop, and said the thing he always said: "Just do it, I'll figure the rest out later." I registered the account using the email address connected to my carrier profile, an address I'd had for 8 years, the one I used for everything administrative. My father's business name was on the account, his tax ID, his license number. But the login credentials, the recovery email, the 2-factor authentication, all of it flowed through me. He had been submitting invoices through that portal for 3 years. Or rather, I had been submitting them, then walking him through it when he forgot the steps, then just doing it myself when he said he didn't have time. The last invoice I had submitted was 6 weeks before that Thursday. $4,200 for a commercial HVAC retrofit on one of Meridian's buildings. He had not submitted one himself. Not once. Not in 3 years. He was about to find that out. By Monday afternoon, my work messaging app showed a notification I hadn't been expecting. "Priya. Hey, someone called the main office line asking if we had a number for you. Said they were family." I read that twice. They had called my workplace. My father, or someone acting on his behalf, had gone to the effort of calling my employer's main line to try to find a number for me. That told me 2 things. 1, they had already run out of other options. 2, whatever was happening had escalated faster than I expected. I told Priya, "Please don't give out my number or confirm anything. I'll explain later." She replied, "Already told them you weren't available. You okay?" I was more than okay. I was paying attention. That evening, I logged into the carrier's website using my own credentials. I still had full account access, even though my personal line was canceled, because I was still the account manager, and I looked at the activity log. His business line had received 14 calls since Thursday that had gone to voicemail. The voicemail inbox was full because nobody had cleared it. The after-hours forwarding rule was still set to a number that, according to the log, had been dialed incorrectly during a manual override attempt sometime Sunday morning, which meant someone had tried to get into the call settings, failed, and the forward had gone to a dead configuration. 14 client calls, routed to a full voicemail. For 4 days, I closed the browser, made dinner, and went to bed at a reasonable hour for the first time in recent memory. Tuesday was when the Meridian situation surfaced. I know this because Priya forwarded me an email that had come into our company's general inbox, not mine. Our company's from a Meridian property coordinator named James Okafor. He was looking for a contact at Reyes HVAC. He had tried the business line twice and reached a full voicemail. He had an outstanding compliance document that needed a contractor signature before a city inspection scheduled for Thursday. Without it, the inspection would be delayed and the building's certificate of occupancy renewal would be at risk. He wasn't angry in the email. He was just thorough, the way property coordinators are when they're trying to document that they did everything right before something went wrong. He had CC'd 2 people at Meridian and noted the date and time of his call attempts. "Priya. This came to us by mistake, I think. The email domain looks like it was misfiled somewhere. Do you know this company?" I sat with that for a long moment. Then I wrote, "I know who it's for. Not my problem to route it anymore. Can you just reply that it came to the wrong address?" She did. And somewhere across the city, A coordinator for my father's most important client was now one step closer to putting the account on a watch list. That night, Marcus found me. Not my number, he didn't have it. He found me through Instagram, a platform I'd barely touched in a year, and sent a DM that said, "Dana, Dad is actually freaking out. Like legitimately. Please just call him, or tell me a number I can give him." I appreciated Marcus more in that message than I usually did, because he wasn't pretending the problem was mine. He was scared, and he said so plainly, and that was more honesty than I usually got from that house. I replied, "I'm fine. I'm not giving out my number yet. Tell him to call Meridian back, they've been trying to reach him." "Marcus, what's Meridian?" That landed like a stone dropped into still water. My brother didn't know what Meridian was, which meant my father had never told his family about his biggest client, probably because talking about the business meant talking about how it actually ran, and how it actually ran was something he preferred to keep vague. He was the owner. He was the face, the machinery. Behind it, the portals, the compliance docs, the invoice submissions, the vendor relationships that had been quietly mine. I wrote back, "It's his biggest commercial client. He'll know." Then I put my phone face down and watched something on television that I can't even remember now, because my mind was somewhere else entirely. Wednesday, day 6. I went back into the carrier account log that morning out of something I can only describe as clinical curiosity. The business line had now received 22 missed calls total. Someone, my father, I assumed had attempted 3 more manual logins to the app using what looked like guest credentials. All failed. The voicemail inbox had been cleared at some point, probably by someone calling in from the number itself to access it the old-fashioned way, which meant my father had figured out that one workaround at least. But the call forwarding was still broken. Every call that came in after 6 p.m. was hitting a dead end. And the Meridian vendor portal, I didn't log into that. It wasn't mine to manage anymore. But I knew what was in it. An open work order for the compliance document James Okafor needed. A pending invoice from November that hadn't been followed up on. And a login that my father could not access without the credentials he had never thought to write down because I had always just handled it. My new phone, with my new number rang that afternoon, and it was a number I didn't recognize. Area code local. I almost didn't answer. I answered, "Is this Dana Reyes?" A woman's voice. Professional, measured. "Yes. This is Carolyn Marsh from Meridian Property Group. I'm the Vendor Relations Director. I'm calling because we've had some difficulty reaching Reyes HVAC and I found a secondary contact in our original registration file. You're listed as the account administrator." I sat very still. I said. "I'm no longer involved with the business." A pause. "I see. And is there someone else we should be directing communications to? We have a compliance deadline tomorrow for the building at 4th and Commerce, and we haven't been able to reach Mr. Reyes through the business line." "You should reach out to him directly," I said. "I can give you his personal cell number. That would be very helpful." I gave her my father's personal number, the one he'd had for 15 years, the one that was still working on the plan, the one I had memorized the way you memorize everything that matters in a house you grew up in. "Thank you," she said. "And just so you're aware, the vendor account will likely need an administrator update. Currently, all login recovery routes to your contact information." "I understand," I said. "He'll need to contact your vendor support team to transfer it." She thanked me again and hung up. I set my phone down on the kitchen counter and breathed through the specific feeling of watching something large and slow and inevitable continue moving in the direction it was always going to move. He was going to have to explain to Meridian why his account administrator was no longer reachable. He was going to have to figure out how to submit the compliance document himself, or find someone who could, in less than 24 hours. He was going to have to call vendor support and spend however long it took on hold, explaining that the email on the account wasn't his because it had never been his, because he had handed a 19-year-old his login and said just do it and never looked at it again. He thought cutting my line would cost me something. He didn't understand that the line had never just been mine. He called me that night. Not my new number, he didn't have it. He called the one person he knew could get a message to me, which was Marcus, who relayed it through Instagram. "Dad wants to talk. Like really talk. Not yell. He's been on hold with the phone company for 2 hours and something happened with a client and he sounds bad. Dana, please. I read that message for a long time. I thought about what Cass had said when I called her Wednesday evening to talk through whether I should engage. She hadn't told me what to do. She'd asked me one question. What do you want the conversation to actually accomplish? Not what did I want him to feel. Not what did I want him to admit. What did I want the conversation to accomplish? For me. For my life going forward. I thought about that for a while before I answered Marcus. I wrote, give him this number. Tell him he gets one call. If he comes in yelling, I'm hanging up. Marcus. Okay. Thank you. Then, I'm sorry, by the way, for not saying something at dinner. I wrote back, I know. It's okay. It was mostly. Marcus was 23 and had spent his whole life learning, like I had, that agreeing was easier than absorbing the cost of not agreeing. I wasn't going to hold that against him. My father called 40 minutes later. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a glass of water and nothing else. No notes, no prepared speech, no list of grievances to read through. Just the phone on the table, his name on the screen which I had already added to the new contacts, because of course he would call, and the quiet of an apartment that had no one else in it. I picked up on the third ring. Dana. His voice was rough. Not the rough of anger this time. The rough of a man who had been making difficult phone calls for 3 days straight and losing most of them. Hi, Dad. A pause. Your brother says you've got a new number. Yes. Since when? Since Thursday, when you canceled my line. Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear something in the background, the television at home, low, the sound of that specific house settling into evening. I need you to walk me through the Meridian account, he said. Not I'm sorry. Not I made a mistake. The first sentence out of his mouth was a need. I had expected that. I had almost rehearsed my reaction to it, which is why I didn't react at all. I just said, okay, tell me what's happening. And he told me, the compliance document Meridian needed, due by end of day Thursday for a city inspection. The vendor portal he couldn't log into. The password reset that kept routing to an email address he couldn't access my address. The call to carrier support that had taken 2 hours and still hadn't restored his access to the business line app. The voicemail that had filled up. The 14 missed calls he'd listened to one by one when he finally cleared it. 3 of which were from Meridian, 2 from a supplier who'd been trying to confirm a parts delivery, and 1 from a potential new client whose call had been sitting unanswered since Friday. He told me all of it without once saying the word sorry. When he finished, I said, I need to ask you something first. What? At dinner on Sunday. The comment about the phone plan. Did you say that because you actually think I need to move home? Or did you say it because you wanted to remind me that you had something over me? Silence. Dad. I was frustrated, he said. Finally. The first admission of anything. You were pushing back and I was frustrated. So you reminded me that you paid for one line on a plan that I've been running for years without you knowing. More silence. Deeper this time. I didn't know, he said quietly, that you were covering part of the cost. No, I said. You didn't, because you handed me the account and you never asked. The same way you handed me the Meridian registration and never asked. The same way you handed me the voicemail setup and the call forwarding and the supplier contacts and never asked how any of it worked or who was maintaining it. You just assumed I would keep maintaining it because I always had. He didn't answer right away. I gave him the silence. He'd earned it. I need help with the Meridian document, he said finally. The inspection is tomorrow. I know, I said. I'll send you what you need. I'll transfer account access and give you the credentials for the vendor portal. But I want to say something first, and I need you to actually hear it, not wait for me to finish so you can respond. A long breath. Okay. I have been managing the back end of your business and this family's accounts since I was 19 years old. Not because you asked me to. Because you handed me something and I was responsible enough to maintain it, and neither of us ever stopped to name what that actually was. And last Sunday you used the one thing you were still paying for as a way to remind me that I owed you. While sitting on top of years of work you never paid me for and never acknowledged. I stopped. Let it land. I'm not asking you to pay me back, I continued. I'm not asking for an apology right now, though I think at some point you owe me one. What I'm asking is that you understand clearly, not conveniently, that canceling my line cost you more than it cost me. Because what you cut wasn't just a number. It was the person who knew where everything was. The silence after that was the most complete silence I had ever heard from my father. Not angry silence. Not building silence. Just a man sitting in a kitchen in a house that had gotten very complicated in a very short time, understanding something for the first time that he should have understood years ago. "I hear you," he said. 3 words. Small ones. But from Victor Reyes, who had never in my memory admitted to anything without a fight, they landed differently than I expected. "Okay," I said. "I'm going to email you the Meridian login credentials and the steps to transfer the account to your own email. I'll include the compliance document template and instructions for submitting it. You'll need to call vendor support to finalize the administrator change. It's about a 40-minute call, but they'll walk you through it." "Okay." "The carrier account, I'll remove myself as account manager and update the auto pay to your card. You'll get an email from the carrier with instructions. You need to update your payment method before the next billing cycle or the plan will suspend." "Okay." "The business line app. I'll send you the setup instructions. You'll need to rebuild the voicemail greeting and call forwarding from scratch. The old configuration is gone." He didn't say anything to that one. I let it sit. Yeah, the phone plan. Going forward, I'm off it. I have my own now. But you need to know what's in that account, actually know it, not hand it to someone and assume. There's a list of everything I was managing. I'll send it with the email. It's longer than you're expecting." A pause. "How much longer?" 11 items, I said. "Some of them are things I've been maintaining for 4 years. He went quiet again. And this time I recognized the quality of it. It wasn't resistance. It was the specific quiet of a person doing math in their head and arriving at a number they didn't want to say out loud. "I didn't know," he said again. Softer this time. Almost like he was saying it to himself. "I know you didn't," I said. "That's the problem." I told him I'd send the email within the hour. Then I said goodnight, and I hung up before he could add anything, because I had said what I needed to say, and I had meant it, and I didn't want to dilute it by staying on the line until the conversation drifted somewhere easier. I opened my laptop and drafted the email. It took 40 minutes. It was thorough, organized, and completely correct. Every credential, every step, every platform, every instruction. The list of things I had been managing was, as I told him, 11 items long. I formatted it as a numbered list with a brief description of each one and what it required going forward. I looked at it for a moment before I sent it. Point 11 things. Uitly maintained. Never discussed. Never thanked. Never even named until a Thursday morning when he reached into an account he barely understood and tried to use it against me. I pressed send and closed the laptop and sat in the quiet of my apartment, and for the first time in a very long time I felt like the size of myself. The Meridian inspection cleared on Thursday afternoon. My father submitted the compliance document himself, using the credentials I had sent, following the steps I had written out. It took him 3 attempts and a 20-minute call to Meridian's vendor support, but he did it. Marcus told me, not my father. My father didn't call to say it worked. I didn't expect him to. The carrier account got sorted by the end of that week. He updated the payment method, removed me as account manager, and added my mother as the new account holder. I hoped she was ready for that. Managing a 5-line wireless account is not a small thing. There are settings inside settings. I had spent years knowing exactly where all of them were. I wished her luck, genuinely, and then I updated the recovery contact and removed myself entirely. It was a Tuesday evening when I did that. I remember because I had just gotten back from a run and was still in my shoes when I sat down to finish the last few transfers. I updated the final account, closed the laptop, and sat on my couch for a while, not doing anything. Just existing in the specific lightness of a person who has finally put down something they didn't realize they were still carrying. 11 things. Gone from my responsibility in the span of 10 days. I have thought about that number a lot since then. 11 things I had absorbed so quietly, so completely, that the people benefiting from them had no idea they existed until they stopped existing. That is not the story of a generous daughter. That is the story of a system that only works when one person agrees to be invisible inside it. I had agreed to that for a long time. I stopped agreeing on a Thursday morning in a parking garage when my phone showed 2 words, "no service," and something in me said, "Good." My father and I have spoken 4 times since that phone call. They have been short conversations. Careful ones. He has not made another comment about my apartment or my independence or what things look like from the outside. I don't know if that's growth or just strategy with my father. The two can be hard to separate. But I'm watching, and I'm not in a hurry to decide which it is. My mother called me the week after everything settled. She didn't address any of it directly, that is not how she operates, but she asked if I wanted to come for dinner sometime. Just the 2 of us, on a Tuesday when my father had a job in the evening. I said I'd think about it. I am still thinking about it. That's the honest answer. Marcus texts me more than he used to. Small things. A meme. A question about something he's cooking. A check-in on a Sunday afternoon that doesn't ask for anything. I think he's trying, in the language available to a 23-year-old who grew up in the same house I did, to say that he sees me differently now. I appreciate that more than I've told him. Priya and I got dinner last month, and somewhere between the appetizers and the main course she asked me if I regretted any of it. Not the phone plan switch, she knew that was easy. She meant the call, the email, the decision to hand everything back instead of quietly maintaining it forever. I thought about it the way I've learned to think about real questions. Not the first answer, not the comfortable answer, but the true one. I regret that it took this long, I said. I don't regret that it happened. She nodded like that was the answer she expected. I kept one thing from all of it. Not a document, not a record. Just a habit. Every time I take on something now, at work, in a friendship, anywhere, I ask myself one question before I agree to maintain it indefinitely. Does the other person know this exists? Not just that it gets done. That it exists. That someone is doing it. That without that someone, it would stop. If the answer is no, I name it out loud before I start. Every time. It is the smallest possible thing, and it has changed more than I expected. Because the problem was never that I helped. The problem was that I helped in a way that made me erasable. And the moment my father tried to erase me, he discovered that the line he cut ran deeper than either of us had said out loud. He thought a phone plan was leverage. It turned out to be an education. I have a new number now. A clean account, just my name, just my card, just my lines. My apartment is the same one, but it feels different in the way spaces feel different when you stop dreading the phone ringing from inside them. My kitchen window still faces the street. I still drink coffee in the morning and watch the city start up below me. The difference is that now, when the quiet comes, I don't fill it. I let it stay. Because I've learned that the people who used to call that quiet irresponsibility were the same ones filling it with their own needs and calling it family. And I've learned that a person who knows where everything is, who quietly holds 11 things together without ever being asked, that person is not a burden. That person is the infrastructure. And when the infrastructure leaves, the building tells the truth about what it was built on. If you watched this far, you already know this story hit different. If you want more stories like this one, real ones, the kind people are afraid to tell, they're on your screen right now. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you there.